The autumn rain hammered against the glass towers of downtown Seattle when Marcus Chen collapsed on the steps of the Space Needle, his designer raincoat doing nothing to shield him from the storm that raged both outside and within. At 38, the founder and CEO of Quantum Dynamics, the Pacific Northwest's most successful artificial intelligence company, possessed a net worth approaching $3 billion. Yet here he sat, weeping openly like a man who had lost everything that truly mattered. Through the downpour, a small figure emerged from the shadows between the tourist shops. A Hispanic boy, no more than 11 years old, clutched a paper bag containing what appeared to be day-old pastries from a bakery dumpster. His sneakers had holes that let in the rain, and his jacket was 3 sizes too large. "Mister, you okay?" the boy asked in accented English, his voice cutting through the sound of rainfall. "You look really sad. Are you hurt somewhere?" Marcus lifted his red-rimmed eyes to meet the child's concerned gaze. The boy was studying him with an intensity that seemed far too mature for someone his age. "I'm not injured," Marcus managed to reply, his voice hoarse. "Just remembering things I wish I could forget." The boy nodded solemnly, as if this explanation made perfect sense. "My abuela used to say that some pain comes from the body, but the worst pain comes from the heart. Missing people." Without hesitation, he opened his bag and offered Marcus one of the pastries. "Food helps sometimes. Not the missing, but it makes you stronger for carrying it." Marcus stared at the offering, overwhelmed by the gesture. "What's your name, kid?" "Carlos Valdez," the boy replied, settling beside Marcus on the wet steps. "You?" "Marcus. Marcus Chen." Carlos studied his face with the careful attention of someone who had learned to read people for survival. "You lost someone important, didn't you, Mr. Marcus?" The simple observation pierced through all of Marcus's carefully constructed emotional defenses. Today marked exactly 18 months since his daughter Emma had died in a car accident while he was traveling for business, a trip he could have postponed, a meeting he could have rescheduled. The guilt had consumed him, destroyed his marriage, and left him questioning everything he had built. "My daughter," Marcus whispered. "She was 7. I wasn't there when she needed me most." Carlos was quiet for a long moment, absently breaking his pastry into smaller pieces. "That's the heaviest kind of missing," he said finally. "I miss my mama too. She didn't die, but she got taken away by some bad people." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Seattle rain. "Taken away? What do you mean?" The boy's expression darkened. 3 months ago, Mama was working night shift cleaning offices in one of these big buildings. She told me about this fancy lady who was always nice to the cleaning people, giving them candy and asking questions about their families. One night, Mama ate some special chocolates this lady gave her, and she got really sick. Next morning, some men in black cars came and said they were taking her to a special hospital. I never saw her again. Marcus felt his blood run cold. There was something disturbingly familiar about this story, though he couldn't immediately place why. "Which building, Carlos? Do you remember?" "The one with the big Q on top," Carlos pointed toward the Quantum Dynamics headquarters tower visible through the rain. "Mama always said she liked cleaning the important floors because the people there were changing the world with computers." The pieces began clicking into place with horrifying clarity. The important floors would be the executive levels where only Marcus's inner circle had access. And he knew exactly who Carlos was describing. Dr. Helena Reeves, his 45-year-old chief technology officer, who had been his mentor and business partner since they founded the company together 8 years ago. "Carlos, this fancy lady, can you describe her more?" The boy tilted his head, concentrating. "Really tall, like a model. Always wore her blonde hair in a perfect ponytail. She had these blue eyes that seemed super smart but kind of cold, you know? And she always smelled like expensive perfume." Marcus's hands began to shake. The description fit Helena perfectly. But why would she? "Your mother, did she ever mention overhearing conversations during her cleaning work?" Carlos's eyes sharpened with an intelligence that seemed far beyond his years. "You think the fancy lady from your building did something bad to my mama, don't you?" The directness of the question caught Marcus off guard. This kid was connecting dots faster than most adults could manage. "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted. "But I'm going to find out." "Carlos, where are you staying tonight?" The boy shrugged with practiced nonchalance. "There's a place under the freeway overpass where the rain doesn't get through. I've got a sleeping bag hidden there." Marcus made an immediate decision. "How would you feel about staying somewhere warm and dry while I make some phone calls? I have a guest room at my house, and I promise you'll be safe." Carlos studied him carefully. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." "Because you offered me food when you thought I was in pain," Marcus replied honestly. "And because no child should have to sleep under a freeway." As they made their way through the rain-soaked streets toward Marcus's house in the Queen Anne district, Marcus was already formulating a plan. If Helena was involved in Carlos's mother's disappearance, there had to be a reason, and Marcus suspected it had everything to do with quantum dynamics' recent breakthrough in military AI contracts. Marcus's house overlooked Elliott Bay, a modern architectural marvel that felt more like a museum than a home since Emma's death. Carlos walked through the space with wide eyes, taking in the expensive artwork and cutting-edge technology displays. "It's like a science fiction movie," Carlos murmured, pausing before a wall-mounted display showing real-time global data streams. While Carlos cleaned up, Marcus retreated to his home office and began making calls. The first was to Sarah Kim, his head of corporate security and a former NSA analyst whose loyalty was beyond question. "Sarah, I need you to pull all employment records for contract cleaning staff from the past year, specifically focusing on Hispanic women between 25 and 40. "Marcus, what's this about?" "I'll explain in person." "Can you be here in an hour?" "And Sarah, keep this completely confidential for now." His second call was to David Park, the criminal defense attorney who had handled Emma's wrongful death case. "David, I need to discuss something that might involve corporate espionage and possibly kidnapping. How quickly can you get to my house?" When Carlos emerged from the shower wearing Marcus's old Stanford sweatshirt, he looked like a completely different child. Clean and dry, his resemblance to someone nagged at Marcus, though he couldn't place it. "Carlos, do you remember your mother's full name?" "Isabella Maria Valdez," Carlos replied, settling at the kitchen table where Marcus had prepared a simple meal. Everyone called her Izzy. Marcus nearly dropped his coffee cup. Isabella Valdez. He recognized that name from the monthly security briefings Sarah provided. Isabella had been specifically assigned to the 32nd floor, the secure level where quantum dynamics' most sensitive military contracts were discussed. "What floor did your mother clean specifically?" Carlos frowned in concentration. "She always talked about the floor with the big conference room where the important people had their secret meetings. She said sometimes she could hear them arguing about numbers that were bigger than anything she could imagine." Marcus's blood turned to ice. The 32nd floor housed their classified defense contracts worth over $200 million, projects that only 5 people in the entire company knew about. Himself, Helena, Chief Financial Officer James Wong, General Counsel Patricia Martinez, and Head of Military Contracts Robert Singh. "Did she mention any specific names? Anyone who gave her the chocolates?" Carlos's expression grew thoughtful. "She said there was this really smart lady who was always super friendly to the cleaning people, but Mama thought she was fake nice, you know? Like she was pretending to care. This lady would ask lots of questions about Mama's family, about me, about where we lived." The description sent chills down Marcus's spine. Helena had been pressuring him for months to sell quantum dynamics to a Chinese investment consortium, claiming it was time to expand internationally. Marcus had refused repeatedly, suspicious of the buyer's connections to foreign intelligence services. Just then, the doorbell rang. Sarah arrived first, followed closely by David. As Marcus recounted the situation, both listened with growing alarm. "Let me understand this," David said, leaning forward. "A contractor with access to your most sensitive floors disappears after receiving food from someone matching your CTO's description. Her son has been surviving on the streets for 3 months. And your CTO has been pushing you to sell to questionable foreign investors. There's more," Sarah added, consulting her tablet. "Isabella Valdez was officially terminated for security violations on the same day Carlos says she disappeared. Reason listed, unauthorized access to restricted documents." Carlos, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up. "My mama always kept a journal. She wrote down things she heard at work because she said important conversations should be remembered in case they were needed later." Marcus and his team exchanged meaningful looks. "Do you know where this journal is?" "When the men came for Mama, I grabbed some of her things before I ran away from the foster home they tried to put me in. The journal is with my other stuff in a hiding place downtown." The next morning, Carlos led them to a storage unit he had been renting with money earned from odd jobs around Pike Place Market. Inside a waterproof container were Isabella's personal belongings, including a composition notebook filled with meticulous handwriting. Sarah opened the notebook and began reading aloud. September 15th. Dr. Reeves met with 3 Asian men in expensive suits. They discussed transferring AI algorithms to overseas servers. Dr. Reeves said Mr. Chen would never suspect because he trusts her completely. October 3rd. Overheard Dr. Reeves on phone call mentioning neutralizing obstacles and ensuring complete cooperation from management. She laughed about having leverage over everyone in the company. October 20th. Dr. Reeves showed classified military files to the same foreign visitors. They discussed timeline for acquisition and mentioned accidents that could happen to people who resist. The final entry was dated just days before Isabella's disappearance, October 28th. Dr. Reeves noticed me cleaning near the conference room door. She asked many questions about Carlos, about our family, about who would take care of him if something happened to me. I'm scared. If something happens to me, please find my son and keep him safe. The truth is in these pages. Marcus felt rage building in his chest unlike anything he had experienced since Emma's death. Helena hadn't just betrayed their friendship and their company, she had destroyed a family and left a child to fend for himself on the streets. "We need to find Isabella," Marcus said grimly. "Helena is too calculating to commit murder when leverage would work just as well." While Sarah began tracing financial records and communications, David prepared legal documents for emergency custody of Carlos. Marcus realized that this extraordinary boy had filled a void in his life he hadn't even acknowledged existed. The investigation revealed Helena's elaborate scheme. She had been systematically selling quantum dynamics AI technology to foreign intelligence services while positioning herself to acquire the company at a fraction of its value. Isabella's disappearance hadn't been murder, it had been coerced institutionalization at a private facility where Helena could control the narrative. 3 days later, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. Helena arrived confidently, carrying a briefcase full of forged documents she planned to use to oust Marcus from his own company. "Marcus, I'm afraid recent events have shown that your emotional instability is compromising our international partnerships," Helena began, her voice smooth and professional. "I've prepared a transition plan that would be in everyone's best interests." Speaking of international partnerships, Marcus replied calmly, "I'd love to hear more about your meetings with Chinese intelligence operatives." Helena's composure cracked for just an instant. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Marcus nodded to Sarah, who activated a wall-mounted display showing pages from Isabella's journal alongside security footage of Helena's meetings with foreign agents. "Helena Reeves," David announced as FBI agents entered the boardroom, "you're under arrest for corporate espionage, conspiracy, kidnapping, and treason." As handcuffs clicked around Helena's wrists, she turned to Marcus with desperation in her eyes. "Marcus, please. You don't understand the pressures I was under. We can work something out." "You taught me everything about business," Marcus replied quietly. "But you forgot to teach me that some people will sacrifice anything for power. Including innocent families." Later that afternoon, Isabella was rescued from the private facility where Helena had been holding her under false medical pretenses. The reunion between mother and son took place in Marcus's living room, and the tears of joy finally began to heal wounds that had seemed permanent. 6 months later, the adoption papers were finalized. Carlos had chosen to keep his original name while officially becoming Carlos Valdez-Chen. Isabella worked as Quantum Dynamics' new Director of Ethics and Compliance, a position Marcus had created specifically for her. "Papa Marcus," Carlos called from the kitchen where he was helping Isabella prepare dinner. The word still made Marcus's heart skip with joy. "Mama says Emma would have liked having a big brother like me." Marcus smiled, watching his new family through the doorway. Helena's betrayal had been intended to destroy him, but instead it had led him to two people who had taught him that healing was possible, that family could be chosen as well as born, and that sometimes the greatest revenge was simply building something beautiful from the wreckage of cruelty. Emma would always be missed, but Carlos and Isabella had shown him that love multiplied rather than divided, and that honoring his daughter's memory meant opening his heart to others who needed it.